Zach from Gravel Bike California. Back up here at 7,000 feet in the San Bernardino Mountains as we're bringing back Send It Big Bear. Now, I was here less than 2 months ago for Tour to Big Bear, the long gravel, and that event showcases a little bit more of the fire roads, but we're able to take some more single track, and you can find a lot of fun here because it's really epic. Robin, once again from the Tour to Big Bear, came across this course. We had some major rains last week that even took out a highway, but we get all the goodness because he did some great scouting. So, let's roll! After last year's Send It Big Bear, it wasn't a question about bringing it back, but could we do it better? Although the forecast showed a good chance of rain, it didn't stop us with camping, as Robin, along with the Big Bear Cycling Association, secured us the Buttercup Campground that barely brought us any precipitation, and maybe next year we'll take camping up another level. I also thought the weather wouldn't hold up for a little pre-ride. With Robin knowing it worse, we'd only feel it lightly, meaning I came in a bit overdressed as shedding layers became the theme, riding a clockwise loop up to Skyline. That's always a highlight and a spine for adventure, not to mention with views with San Gorgonio in the background, taking in a fun couple miles of Skyline single track before the main attraction tomorrow. Our modified route from last year hit the dirt first on the south side, making sure everyone would take in the cabin trail. Then heading over north to Grace Peak Trailhead, adding some new dirt before finishing at Hanna Flats. Overall, this route covered a playful 34 miles and roughly 3,000 feet of gain. Once again, we met in Big Bear Lake at Copper Q, many arriving having better weather here than where they were coming from, so we were all ready to roll on a gorgeous day, starting out on a little backdoor bike path that many didn't know about, leading the group on a wiggly 2 miles to a few more hills to negotiate, more appropriate for a group than riding on a highway, though definitely with a few more hills to negotiate, and hard to give directions on the fly, but clearly acquired a way to begin, finding our way into Snow Summit with Robin waiting after utilizing his emergency skills to help another find clothes, seeing a number of mountain bikers ready for the lifts, but we turned away from the vertical assist, although it would have saved us a lot of climbing, beginning with a half mile of steady upward on the town trail, a primarily east-west backbone, where you'll see a number of downhillers after making their runs. That wasn't all about being in the small ring, taking advantage of as much real estate possible, also needing to navigate around the many streams, with traffic quieter after passing those exiting the Going Green Trail, making it easier to go over bridges and light water flow. But we were just getting started with vert, exiting out of the town trail into not the most smoothest transition to climbing between the steep grade and ruts from a recent storm, making this first 1.25 miles of Knickerbocker Road punch above its numbers. Though there were unintended benefits, surprise, we were this high above the lake. That is, if you were able to notice, because it was hard to look back, putting in all this work, creating some unplanned rubbernecking, mostly trapped deep into the forest, appreciating the opportunities to look out when it presents itself, and nice when the grind ended after passing Coyote Trail, to enjoy some playful rollers that at 2 miles didn't think would be longer than the climb. As having never ridden this part of Knickerbocker, I didn't expect it to be so flat underneath the ridge following Skyline, which you would have soon reached making a left. Instead, just a little more added climbing before a well-timed regroup before one of our featured single tracks that would even outshine this view. When I said I wanted to do this ride better, I also meant capturing it too, bringing a total of 6 cameras with me and Anton's, because descending the cabin trail deserved as many angles as possible. we didn't make it to the bottom uninterrupted, as the recent rains washing out Highway 38 took a toll down here. But even though we didn't take the proper path, it was simple to audible, paralleling the main trail by just yards, all finding the end at Aspen Glen picnic area, giving us 6.5 miles of road to get there, meandering our way towards the lake that we'd be encircling first on Highway 18, where we'd be keeping it single file with only a little space off the white line, passing by a number of cabins where people would be taking this road after checkout, and after rolling by the picture-perfect Boulder Bay. There isn't much space for highway along the lake, meaning short spurts of climbing, but at least we knew we'd return to water level soon, converging at the west end of the lake, with the dam signaling the turn onto Highway 38. And in case you're wondering, it's about 15 miles to do one loop around, as on the north side, traffic tends to be quieter, but could also mean drivers are emboldened to go faster, as it was flat for us after the initial pitch. That might have been a factor in splitting up this group, meaning a lot of catch-up had to be made to keep the front from sprinting off. That doesn't help if you're leading without the route, because you don't want to overshoot this stretch of dirt. Starting out on the Grout Bay Trail, this first mile is definitely the toughest, averaging 6.5%, though definitely not consistent. With my biggest issue was oncoming dizziness from the elevation, making it harder to focus despite really needing it here. But yeah, it's a group ride, so eventually we'll all get there. And at least the trail is in great shape, although not much you could do about the boulders. So this was definitely a workshop in technique, trying not to look down and keep the belief. There was no obstacle I couldn't overcome, but this pain would not last forever, merging with the fire road, signaling the end of this segment. Regrouped, it was about 1.5 miles to reach our loop, trending slightly up but mainly rollers, all correctly passing one fire road that dead ends quickly. But other than that, the riding was issue-free, preferring this wider space for flow, and no protrusions like the quarry riding before, though it did get more interesting once the sand lightened color and these rock formations began to appear, able to view the area still recovering from fire damage, though immediately around us looked superb. While beginning our loop, it would actually end just after starting our second revolution on the Hanna Flat Trail. But continuing down past the Grays Peak campground gave us a different look, though knowing the mechanics of doing a complete circle, that whatever elevation we gave away, we'd have to get back, not having a nuisance of a difficult grade, unless you're just eager like me to get downhill, with Robin guarding the turn onto Grout Creek Cutoff, except for those wanting to shorten the ride. That's an interesting little road, not expecting to find another campground out here, now merging onto the earlier said Hanna Flat Trail. This section we'd be repeating later, with this stretch only being 1/2 mile. That's pretty much a gradual ascent most of the way, except as it finishes off, as I almost finished myself off, maybe the world trying to tell me to take a breather. On this go-around, we exited to a hard left onto the peculiarly named Snowslide Road. That didn't get the memo I wanted to go downhill, but this section looked so intriguing I had to pull out my floating camera, though it doesn't quite capture how bumpy it is at ground level, needing that special stride to stay upright, and making sure not to let go of momentum, because it was easy here to get bounced off of your line. But if you made it to this point, you finished off the worst of it, coinciding hitting our highest point here on the north side, meaning it was time to let gravity take its course, and making sure we were on the right route, overjoyed to finally let loose. Say you want a revolution, we got it circular-wise. Now finally cutting through on the lower Hanna Flats trail. Still familiar from last year's ride, confident that the boulders would still be in place, as well as a lot of uphill too. And once we merged back with the upper, I had just one job for the remainder, and that was just not crashing deja vu style again, as after not feeling the need to clock in for overtime, because this final mile of Hanna Flats felt like a time and a half of fun. We still had some dirt ahead of us, but not necessarily here, needing to exit the Hanna Flats campground, taking this long to merge onto this year's Dirty Bear route, where the transition to off-roading resumed, though only briefly with the turnoff to Delamar Mountain, always seemingly greeted by a vehicle, as Coxey Road now switched to Rim of the World Drive, that was relatively quiet for us, because it's also connected to many other campgrounds, and you can pick up a lot of speed, even faster than what most vehicles can do, so definitely be on the lookout. Even tour buses head up here. Finishing off our last downhill in Fawnskin, a quiet town on the northeast corner of the lake, with a little bit of western flair to it, so rolling out felt like we had a big posse in tow, having about half the lake to loop around, but this is way flatter, making it harder to hold corners, even though this was a highway and we're just cyclists, with the speed directive more about beating the rain, using local knowledge to take a shortcut on Shore Lane, saving a little distance but an even quieter ride, and closer to the shore, although we couldn't see much of it, making it back onto Highway 38, miles away from the portion that recently washed out, turning for the cut through across the lake, as I just learned Stanfield Cutoff existed since the 19th century. That was a natural bridge when water levels were low, leading us back to Highway 18, though just briefly, because the play is to take side streets, most of the way back to the start to avoid traffic and street lights, although you can't totally avoid not getting back on, because we were eager to get back into the main part of town, because with this much fun, a little celebrating was in order.
Well, there's definitely a different relationship us who live more at sea level have with weather forecasts than people up here in the mountains. I mean, really, we only got a little bit of rain, and that was the day before, and it actually made the riding better. Obviously, having a little bit of moisture on some of these trails just really locked them down, and Robin really put together the perfect set of roads and single track for us to cover, and so I think we all feel emboldened to him for making today happen. So thank you, Robin, and I know you're already looking forward to another fantastic tour to Big Bear, so that's something we all have to roll. Anyways, if you want to support these rides, our travels, please support us on Patreon. Go to our shop so we can bring you more. From the State of Dirt,